the challenge is that we've been conditioned through only the last 2 generations, really, that life is more of a comfort-centric experience rather than a growth-centric experience. We're the first generation in history that's had food certainty. You see a lot of people these days with an underdeveloped warrior archetype. They dabble at everything, complete nothing.
How do you become Peter Sage as we know him today?
Yeah, if you want to be the star of your movie rather than end up as some film extra in a big budget disaster movie when you turn on the news at night, you have to make a decision that that's what you're going to do. And at 17 years old, I got into personal growth at the same time I got into entrepreneurship. If you see an external situation as a threat, you will lose up to 30% of your muscle strength. But if you perceive that external situation, same situation, but you see it as a challenge rather than as a threat, you'll gain up to 30% in muscle strength.
On this episode of the Elite Podcast, I speak to Peter Sage, serial entrepreneur, international best-selling author, and expert on human behaviour. Peter, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fabulous with a capital S. Really good.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. I believe it's your birthday today.
Yes, thank you. 52, and I've got to say I'm more excited about the next 52 years than the last 52, and I was pretty damn excited about the last 52.
That was a great way to look at stuff. Well, I really appreciate your time, especially with it being your birthday and everything. So I'm dead excited about this one to speak to you. I've been following you for a bit. A friend of mine, Danny Walker, obviously directed me towards you, and I've been looking at your content's amazing. I mean, you're so well put together, the way you communicate and everything as well. So I think we'll have a great podcast today. So I wanted to, if it was okay with you, just kind of regress back a little bit, talk about where you grew up, and we'll just work our way through, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, happy to, as long as I can. Yeah, I'll pre-frame this with, for the people that we're gracious enough to have their time to listen, is that, don't make it about me. Yeah, make it about what you can see through your own eyes as what relates to your story. So hopefully if I can share some insight or any of the lessons I was, have cost me to learn, then look at it from there rather than, there's some guy talking about himself as such. So I just want to share that. So
people don't think
that, so I normally make it about holding up a mirror to remind people of their own greatness rather than, have them stare at me.
Sounds good. So whereabouts in the UK did you grow up, or was it in the UK?
Leicester boy, born and bred.
Leicester.
Yeah, multi-generational Leicester lad, which is probably why I'm no longer there, to be fair. No, nothing against Leicester, but I didn't see the sun till I was 12.
No, I bet.
England is not my top 10 places to stay. So I got out of there in my mid-20s. So I'm sure we'll get to that. But I grew up in Leicester in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, child of the 80s, and we kind of remember those days where parents would kick you out of the house in the morning and say, "Go play and just make sure you're back for dinner." That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah.
No, unfortunately.
But I had a great childhood. I really did. We have a lot of people that go through adversity in childhood through whatever reason. And that can obviously set up a pattern for whether people take on the role of victim or whether people take on the role of, that's never going to happen to my children, so I'm going to become the best parent I can be. Again, that's a choice. That's not down to what happens. That's down to what you do with what happens. But I actually had a really great childhood. I was an only child. There was a theory about being spoiled. I can tell you it's a myth. Certainly on my side. I grew up with dogs. I've got a very strong affinity and connection to dogs because I didn't have brothers or sisters to play with, and my dad loved dogs. So I've always had dogs all my life, which are really the epitome from my perspective of unconditional love.
No, they are, aren't they? Yeah.
You can shout, you can scold them, whatever, and you walk in the door 10 minutes later and they just are wild with excitement to say, thank you for being in my life. And that's a good lesson I think humans can learn.
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle puts it in a great way. He says, if you see two ducks on a pond and they have a bit of an argy-bargy, a bit of a squabble, and over whatever, some tadpole, I don't know, whatever ducks squabble over, and then they go on their way, separate, and 30 seconds later they can come back and there's no residual. Whereas we have an argument with our spouse or our partner or whatever, and we carry it with us for the next, some people lifetime, but certainly for the next few hours at worst. And you just say, wow, we can learn so much from nature. But as a kid, that was the kind of things that went through my head, in the quiet moments of wondering what the hell you do as a kid playing in the garden on your own.
So you'd think about these things as a kid as well, would you? Would be quite inquisitive and thinking about the differences of animals and people and humanity. I mean, I was quite deep as a child, yeah.
Yeah, I was fascinated. And again, part of that is I wasn't in a unsafe environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get children who, their biggest focus that day when they get home from school is dad going to hit me, having been on the beer.
Yeah.
All right. I was fortunate not to have that. So, yeah, from my side, I was curious. I was that kid open to possibility, kind of a bit of an internal magician. Yeah, I'd live in my own little world and spend a fair bit of time in nature. We had a big garden. We had some fields on the back of that. And yeah, my dad was an avid shooter. His father, my grandfather, owned a gun club. I grew up shooting. I had a pistol for my 6th birthday, a little Webley Junior.
What type of shooting?
So in the early days, it was all air rifles.
Yeah.
I then got into clay pigeon and did very well. And then when I joined the cadets, I shot for the county at 13. I shot for England at 15. I shot for Great Britain at 17. I was national shooting champion. Mainly 7.62 target rifle at 600 meters was my main range.
Wow, brilliant.
So yeah, busy guy for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was me, just out with my air rifle and having fun. And yeah, it taught me a lot. People say, oh my God, you give a kid a pistol for his 6th birthday. Well, no, what you give a kid for his 6th birthday is an understanding of safety, the importance of discipline, the importance of, this isn't something to play cowboys and Indians with. And that was very grounding for me to understand at an early age that, it's the empty gun that kills a man. Yeah. And but as a kid growing up, I don't have any bad memories, which is, again,
that's great. Yeah, well, that created a space obviously for you as well, didn't it? To kind of to grow and to reflect, because obviously if there's trauma going on, like you said, your immediate is just dealing with survival, isn't it? But what you said there about the guns is very interesting. They're saying it now, give children dangerous things to do and watch them, and guide them rather than stopping them. Because very much so, I grew up, 76 I was, so not far off, but grew up in a very similar time in the 80s, like you said, out on the streets, kind of, getting into bits of mischief, climbing up to trees and as high as you can get, and then figuring out how the heck am I going to get down this thing, getting stuck, so...
expand it.
Setting fire to things as well, which we probably shouldn't have. So, you're doing dangerous things naturally back then. So I think that kind of generation did have that. But they're saying now, to allow your kids to, because they do kind of stop a lot of danger, don't they? The risk adverse with a lot of things. And I think that's detrimental to the character of somebody's development.
The unchallenged person remains juvenile.
Yeah.
Fact. And they did social studies on this around the 70s, the first ones actually, where they tried to overprotect the children because you had some sort of, pendulum swing out of the sort of harshness of the 60s, 50s and 60s, and then a bit of the free love of the 70s into the sort of feminism movement. And and there was a large predominance there for overprotection. And I'm not saying there was anything right or wrong with those eras. I'm just saying from an observational point of view, they then did these studies where they took kids and essentially bubble wraps them emotionally, physically, in terms of against anything that could harm them. Social disaster. These kids turned out to be the most dysfunctional, the most, socially inept, the easiest to cry, and it's the famous statement, which has never been truer. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing now, isn't it? I think.
We've got an entire generation right now, Lee, that has been grown up with the whole concept of I'm easily offended, right? Which is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? You want to be able to, the biggest gift you can give your kid is a level of self-esteem where no matter what anybody says, calls them, does, they're immune. It's like, doesn't affect them. It's like, your opinion of me is none of my business.
Yeah, a resilience to something rather than an avoidance of it.
Yeah, and that's because people make the mistake, and this was a lesson I learned early on, that the challenge is that we've been conditioned through only the last 2 generations, really, that life is more of a comfort-centric experience rather than a growth-centric experience. We're the first generation in history that's had food certainty. Why? Because my parents had rations in the war. It's like we have such an on-demand lifestyle. We have been catered to overdevelop the muscle of instant gratification. And that's why, you get the average kid in college these days and say, go to an ice bath, they'll freak out. Right? It's crazy. But yeah, that level of, say, self-resilience is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to mature into somebody, I was listening to one of the podcasts recently with Andrew Tate and
good old Andrew.
It was and Michael. I always pronounce his surname wrong. The mob boss. I can't
remember his name, but I know you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and Andrew was saying something interesting. He was saying that his daughter he treats like a princess. She's on the private jets, everything else. But his son, who's with another girl, gets nothing. In fact, he walks past him and he pushes him over. He says, "Life's tough."
Yeah.
He says, "You've got to learn to get back up." And he's training his son in order to have more of that required warrior spirit. Now, you don't want to be all warrior. Otherwise, everything's looking for a fight. Everything is an aggression. But if, it needs to be tempered with the lover. It needs to be tempered with the sovereign. It needs to be tempered with that creativity of the magician. But the warrior is about getting stuff done. And you see a lot of people these days with an underdeveloped warrior archetype, which means that they dabble at everything, complete nothing. They find excuses to go to a comfort zone rather than realize that change and transformation never happen in a comfort zone. And if you're born into a growth-centric experience, which if you look at nature, that's what it tells us, then our ability to become the best version of ourselves is reliant on our ability to include discomfort with a smile.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you can't do that because you're too busy bitching that McDonald's ran out of ketchup, right, or whatever it is, or somebody moaned at you on anti-social media, then you're never going to have that level of groundedness that is going to bring your gift to humanity at a time where we bloody well need it.
Yeah, I think we need it more now than ever. Like you said earlier, we've got certainty with food. I mean, the poor people are fat. Isn't that a great accomplishment of the West? Before they were underfed, so what do we do? Where do we go from this? I mean, this was all started from a place of love, I believe. I don't think people intentionally did it, but it's just gone further and further now. And it's just, how do we dig ourselves out of this hole? Do you think we will? Even like there's all these political correctness has been put into the military even now, like the military to defend our country, to defend our rights. And now what we're seeing going on in the world, which is quite disturbing and terrifying for people, is the fact that it's not this peaceful utopia, which would all been believed, wars were really a big thing of the past or things that were distant. There's a possibility of something big happening. And like you said earlier in your earlier quote about soft people creating hard times, it feels like that's about to shift and the hard times might be actually be coming in.
It's cyclical.
Yeah.
And it's, somebody asked me, actually, ironically, at the beginning of the year 2020, before anyone saw what was coming there, they said, what do you think is going to happen this year? I said, well, I can pretty much predict what's going to happen this year. And not because I've got a crystal ball or I'm smart, but because I can look at the last year, the last 100 years, the last 5,000 years, and I can predict exactly what's going to happen for the next year, 100 years, 5,000 years. Two things, challenge and opportunity. And if you're not conditioned to understand that because you're living day to day in a comfort-centric experience, you're going to get slapped. We know as mammals that if we face a situation externally, and a mammal, whether that's a mouse or a horse or whatever, if you see an external situation as a threat, you will lose up to 30% of your muscle strength, based on your biochemistry of how you're thinking, right? That's why animals, or dogs, roll over and play dead if the other dog's bigger or more aggressive, right? That's why there's a hierarchy of social structure in wolf packs, for example, right? But if you perceive that external situation, same situation, but you see it as a challenge rather than as a threat, you'll gain up to 30% in muscle strength.
That's crazy.
How we work.
Yeah.
What is nature trying to teach us? What is nature endowing us with even as a biochemistry when it comes to engaging with the outer world? Do we rise and are rewarded for seeing our problems as a challenge, something to rise to, or do we quit and end up on the couch? All right. Well, one's going to lead to muscles, one's going to lead to extinction.
Yeah, of course.
Right? That's how the game's set up. So yeah, we are going to, we need to go through tough times right now. Our systems are 100 billion% unsustainable. We're doing a lot of damage to the planet in many different ways, depending on whether you subscribe to the climate change agenda or not. It's irrelevant. I'm not particularly worried about climate change. What scares me is climate change policy, right? But when it comes to the other things that we're doing, every single second, a 20-ton truck full of clothes is incinerated because of the fast fashion industry. That's having a massive impact. We've got enough clothes on the planet right now to fully clothe the next 6 generations of humans.
Wow.
Right now, before we make one more thing. But no, everybody wants a new piece of clothing, even if they wear it twice and sling it. Right? So there's a lot of things, and I could give 1,000 examples. That was just one. But there is a need right now for us to grow up.
Yeah, 100%.
Mature, not physically. We don't get to choose whether we mature physically or not. That's part of the rule set. I'm 52 today, right? It's like, I'm going to look different 20 years from now, just as I looked different 20 years ago. And you can take all the vitamins and lift all the weights and, if you want to go do Botox, do all that kind of crap. But I've got news for you. You're going to look differently because aging is part of the rule set. However, maturing emotionally is a choice. And a lot of people, unfortunately, especially with the current conditioning around the university wokeness and all the bullshit, is conditioning people to settle for emotional teenagers for the rest of their life. And that's going to have a consequence. Expect to be challenged because that's why we're here. Right?
Yeah.
If you're looking to get the gold medal and you got a personal trainer, his job is to kick your ass. His job is to kick you out of bed at 3 a.m. for a BFT or whatever it may be, to go out there and go really deliver because they believe in you and they want the best of you to come out. And what is our personal trainer? I'll tell you, life. And if you believe that life is on your side, then when you see a challenge, it's a workout in the gym from your personal trainer who cares and believes enough in you to be able to ask you to rise. And that's how I approach my philosophy on life.
Brilliant. It's great. It's great to hear as well. It's great philosophy, by the way. And after watching some of your material and reading your books, I knew you were very spiritual. You're a very caring person. You're very inclusive. You try to help everyone around you. But I love your warrior spirit as well. That is strong. To come from a place of caring as well, of love, and to be that much of a warrior is something which is very inspiring. I try to do myself as well. People see your exterior as something that's quite, for myself, quite strong. I'm a former paratrooper, multiple world kickboxing champion, but I'm quite tough with people when I deal with them. But everything I do comes from a place of love. It's to improve people. It's to help people, and and that is not always to tell them what they want or to do what they want. It's to give them what they need and to pull them through the path that they didn't want to go through or they didn't think they were capable of. So it's really interesting to hear that. So obviously you're growing up in Leicester, you went to the cadets and everything. So how do you become Peter Sage as we know him today? What inspired that direction in your life then?
Well, what's fascinating, I mean, Steve Jobs said it beautifully, when he was around. He says, you can only join the dots looking backwards. You never know the steps that are being planted where they lead until you actually get to the end of the path and you see, wow, now I know why that happened. Or wow, now I see the genius in the left turn that I thought was taking me away from my goal was actually a perfect detour for setting me up for something downstream. And I was 10 years old when I was in the playground at school, and there was I was chatting with the lads about this program that was on the TV, which is called The Paras by Frank Hilton.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Followed 480 Platoon.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it, and a gentleman who I don't think I've ever spoke to since I was 10 years old when I left that school, and I don't know if he ever understood the impact he had on me, but he said something as an offhand comment during that lunch break in the playground that fundamentally changed my life, 10 years old. He said, we're talking about how great the program was. He says, my life ambition is to wear the red beret. And what captivated me at that time was the words life ambition. I've never heard of a life ambition. That sounded like, wow, a purpose. Something to strive towards, something that gave meaning. There was a part of my 10-year-old self that just went, wow. And of course, what I adopted the same one because it was like, yeah, cool. Right? So my mission from 10 years old was to go to para. That was my mission in life.
That's very specific as well. And then what battalion you wanted as well.
I wanted to go to para and then to the regiment. 22nd. That was all I cared about. I lied about my age at 12. I joined the cadets. And I should have been 13. I won Cadet of the Year 3 years running. I ended up as youngest ever CSM going for Cadet RSM. Attaché to the Lord Lieutenant's Cadet. I won 7 national awards, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. All because my focus was military Paris. That was it. I would get home from school at 13, 14. I wouldn't care about homework. I care about putting a burden on my back, full of yellow pages back in the day, and go for a 6-7 mile tab because I thought P Company was the only challenge I was going to have to pass to become a para. The rest I should be able to do. And what that did looking back, because I never went to the Paris. I never made it to the Paris. Life stepped in. But what it did through that particular period of my life, which is quite formative years as a young man, 12 to 17 is...
Very, very influential and formative years.
Yeah. It taught me how to value health. It taught me how to value fitness. I became the youngest instructor, still to this day, in the British Army Cadet Force. I passed my senior cadet instructor's card at my SAIC at 14 years old. They'd never had anyone under 16, and after that they changed the rules saying you couldn't apply, hence it still stands. But I went through full regular Army school training on how to teach, because as a 4-star cadet, I passed everything, and I was still 14 years old. And because I was an achiever, and I became an achiever because I was trying to prove to the world I was good enough, right, to get over the insecurities of the fact that I wasn't. I got into weights at 14. Why? Because I got 3 stripes on my arm trying to tell people 3 times my size that were 17 what to do, and I needed more than the stripes to back it up.
Yeah, of course.
And I look back and I thought, wow, the cadets taught me leadership. It taught me discipline. It taught me how to value fitness. It taught me how to teach. Right? It taught me how to speak in front of crowds. Right? It taught me how I was leading the battalion at 15 years old. And all of those things set up for a life of being a teacher or somebody who can inspire, somebody who can lead from the front, somebody who has to lead themselves first. Yeah, and that was fascinating. And I remember I actually took my entrance exam for the Army. They offered me any job. I said I want to be a para. They advised me to get a trade. I said, well, right, so I thought, okay, I'll go 9 Squadron para engineer. At least I'll get my wings. There was no available stuff. I says I'll be a armorer. With a REME. Small arms is my passion. I was a marksman on every weapon in the British Army at that point, from LMG, GPMG, SMG, in Browning. I got every accolade. I've been shooting since I was 6. Who wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And they said there's no space for an armorer. So my business brain kicked in. I said, okay, what's the highest paid job in the Army? They said air tech, with a REME, middle wallet. I'm like, sign me up, 9 years, done. Took my oath, King Shilling. Now, from your perspective, Lee, and anyone military listening to this will probably appreciate, I've already taken my oath. I now come under military law, I come under civilian law. I've got, at this point, probably about a month before my intake, I'm signed up for 9 years. What's the chances of me not going in the Army?
Very slim.
Very slim.
Yeah.
But the universe didn't want me to go in. The universe wanted me to become an entrepreneur for the majority of my career. And so my last night out with the lads, I don't know if I've shared this on a podcast before, but my last night out with the lads in Civvy Street, I took a little homemade IED with me, basically a homemade firework.
Oh.
Which I was going to set off in a parking lot at midnight to kind of see myself off, which happened to accidentally go off in my pocket while I'm standing at a bar.
Shit.
Yeah. Ironically, I was wearing a bomber jacket. But blew a hole in my jacket, blew 2 glasses off the bar, set fire to some girl's hair. The bar freaking called the bomb squad. Blah, blah. I was thrown into a cell for the night, and I'm like, guys, hey, listen, I need to tell you, I come under military law. I mean, no one was hurt. It was a homemade firework, basically, just a banger. But yeah, homemade. Yeah, and they sent a gentleman to the careers office the next morning that was round the corner from the police station to check out my story. And he walks in and he says, oh, we've got Mr. Sage. Yeah, is he going in the army tomorrow? And they go, oh, well, yes. So he says, okay, why? What happened? Oh, he blew up a bar. I'm like, is he going to get charged? And the policeman said, well, he blew up a bar. He's going to get charged with something. We're discussing what? In the meantime, so they cancel my enlistment. Irreversible process.
Yeah.
Computer. Next guy on the waiting list already told to pack his stuff and get ready, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, they call down a chief inspector to sit in the room with me and say, hey, listen, we've looked at your career. You are exemplary when it comes to the kind of person we want in the army. Yeah, your shooting career, your attaché to the Queen, for the Lord Lieutenant, all of you are the one. He said, we need to find a way, this was his actual words, to harness these maverick tendencies towards our enemies, not towards people in a bar.
Yeah.
Right? He says, so I'm going to give you a caution for this, because if I charge you, you won't be able to go in the army. So I'm going to give you a caution. Go in the army tomorrow, have a great career, go do something good with your skills rather than be a lout on the street. Fair comment.
Yeah.
I come out of the police cell. I go down to the careers office. It was 500 yards from the police station. I said, hey guys, did you hear what happened? Yes, we have. Am I still okay to show up tomorrow morning at the train station for basic training? I said, no, we've cancelled your enlistment. What do you mean? Well, you're going to get charged. You can't go in the British Army if you've got a criminal record pending or anything criminal pending. But I haven't. They let me off because I'm going in the army. Oh, we didn't know that. Too late. Irreversible process. Come in on Monday, speak to the personnel selection officer. We'll figure something out. I went in Monday. The PSO said, I want you to keep your nose clean for 12 months.
Oh, fucking hell. Yeah.
And join the TA if you want. So I went 7th Battalion Royal Anglian as part-time, attached to Recon. We worked with 23 at that point on some stuff. I was a pretty highly trained cadet to start with.
Yeah.
6 years in the ACF teaching and doing a lot of stuff with the regulars. So during that period of just being in the TA, waiting for my kind of probation to expire, I had a strong realization. I don't want to be a soldier being sent to countries by some politician that's trying to move pieces on his freaking chessboard, to quote Blackadder, so that the government can move their drinks cabinet 2 inches closer to the enemy, right? I got a sense that wasn't what I wanted. Why do I want to go be a pawn in somebody else's chess game when really I should be moving the pieces on my own board? And I had a predisposition for business. My dad owned his own business. My mum had a couple of businesses. And I was kind of called Del Boy at school and Arthur Bailey and whatever, because I was always making money somehow. And I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so from 17 to now, which is 35 years today, I've been unemployable.
Yeah.
and built, since that time, probably 28 companies, many of them international. Some have been majestic failures. Some have been, multi-million-dollar global success stories. Some, I was in the Slow Learners Club, should have stayed ideas when I was drunk. And pretty much everything in between. But during that career of an entrepreneur instead of a soldier, and I'd have made a damn good soldier, just as you would have made a damn good entrepreneur going in, and now you're that's where you're heading. But you look back and join the dots and think at some point the universe is always guiding us. What is the chances of that thing going off in my pocket? 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
At that time, all right, there was a bigger hand at play, and that's really when I started to realize that there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes we're not aware of. Yeah, and I started looking at understanding more metaphysics as well as physics.
Do you look out for things like that? Do you think, when you've got an idea set in your mind or a direction you want to go in, do you think sometimes you can limit yourself to other ideas then once you've tunnel visioned on something? And sometimes if you just step back and not so obsessed with it, you can see a bigger picture and sketch out a different way.
I tend to get my answers from a different place now.
Yeah. Do you mind telling us what that is?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll give a little, I'm sure some of the audience are familiar with that. I'll give a 30-second overview on brain science and neuroscience around the human body. So we're called human beings. That's 2 words, human and being. human relates to the physical, right? We have a body, right? And you can put a body in a room, you can put a body in a box, right? But being relates to non-physical. How much being can you put on the head of a pin, right? All of it, right? And we are the ideal encapsulation, if you like, of physical and non-physical in one. Because what makes you, Lee, is not your body. That's different now 20 years ago, as we said 20 years from now, right? But what makes you is the invisible. It's your personality, your hopes, your dreams, your values, your sense of humor, your sense of character. None of that is physical. If I took that out of you and put it in someone else, it'd be you with a different body, right? So the non-physical, which we experience at night, we have a sense of, when we dream, you don't go to Walmart and pick dreams off the shelf, right? They're non-physical. It's an expression. And so if you understand that the interface between the data stream, I'm going to use some language specifically here, which for the audience, I'll keep it as light as I can, right? What we experience in physical matter reality, the outer world, let's call it that, what we perceive to be physical reality, is, as we now know, and they won the Nobel Prize in physics last year for proving it's not real, right? It's non-local. It is generated. We live in a hologram. This is a virtual reality. It's beyond reproach. It's the only thing that fits the equations. That aside, the interface out there, imagine we're a biological radio and we're tuned in, or a TV antenna. We're tuned into different channels. When you dream, you simply tune into a different channel. You get a different data stream, a different broadcast. When we're in the physical world, we tune into physical matter reality. But in order to do that, our brain has to operate at a very specific frequency. We call that beta, which is between, call it 12 and 16 cycles per second, 12, 16 hertz. So when we're in beta, we're having this conversation now. People are driving their cars, listening to this podcast, or they're out, having conversations or shopping. They operate in between that range in their brainwaves. If we put an electroencephalograph, an EEG on their head, we'd be able to see that. The more stressful you are, the more anxiety you get, the more threat we perceive, whether it's imagined in our mind because we feel there's a threat with a mortgage payment as opposed to a saber-toothed tiger, the higher the brainwave goes. So we get into high beta, 18 cycles per second. We feel stressed, anxious. It has a massive impact on our biochemistry. I alluded to earlier, if you see it as a threat, it has a different way whether you see it as a challenge. But brainwaves in beta is where the critical functioning of the front part of the brain, the crowning achievement of human biology, comes in, right? Which means that we're able to make, we make critical decisions. We don't think, the higher the frequency, the less we think straight. We know that. We say stupid stuff when we're angry, for example, or scared. But it tunes us into the outer world. We have a very clear signal to make us focus on the outer world. And that's the evolutionary reason for that, is if there's danger out there, you're not going to meditate your way out of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? You need to be fully focused. All of that non-physical part of you is now, in scientific terms, quantum mechanics, we call it collapsing the wave function. So we are wave and we're particle. We are non-physical, we are physical. And when we get scared, all of that wave energy condenses to particle, and we are now fully focused on the threat in front of us to bring everything to bear, because that's where the issue is. And if we don't deal with it, we might end up being long-term metaphysical, right? If we get eaten. So that's the beta brainwave. If you're trying to think, what's my next move? What's my best business idea? What have I got to do? How do I solve this? And you're thinking from beta, the mind can only construct a new house out of its existing bricks. So we're trying to shuffle information that we know in order to make the best decision. Now, everybody listening to this can relate to the fact that at the time they've had their best idea, probably in the shower, they weren't stressed. They weren't thinking about anything in particular, right? The eureka moments throughout history don't happen in beta. They happen in alpha, which is anywhere between 8, 11 hertz cycles per second. Now, in order to be in alpha, you need to feel exceptionally safe. There's nothing getting your attention in the outer world. You have to be calm. Now, a great example is when we're reading a book. You can tell you're in alpha when the inner world becomes more real than the outer world. And when you're reading a book, you're essentially creating an entire world for yourself out of the meaning of contrasting colors on a page, black and white. And if you're engrossed in a book and your partner calls your name, you don't even hear them. because your inner world is becoming more real. You're creating the character. Yeah, be it Jack Reacher or, Enid Blyton or whatever it may be, right? You're creating the character in the book So in alpha, that's known as the creativity wave. Your best ideas, your insights come from alpha. Now, how do you do that? You have to get calm. That's where meditation really comes in. So to bring it full circle to your question, how do I know which business idea to follow? How do I know which move to make? In beta, you're guessing. They're educated guesses. But I say to my students, I'd much rather know my next move than guess my next 5. So I get downloads, as you would in alpha, as people do all the time, when this flash of inspiration out of nowhere hits. These good ideas. Or when you're running, you're in an alpha state. You're in the zone. You're in a different place. The endorphins are flooding the body. You feel great. There's no threat. Your brainwaves drop. Boom, you get ideas. I'm sure there's people relating to this as we're sharing it. Now, if you want to go further down the scale, you get to Theta. Theta is essentially a state of hypnosis. It's where the front part of the brain is shut down. That's kids, by the way, 0 to 7. They don't have access to beta. Why? Because you don't have enough experience to make critical decisions. So right now, you just need to follow your parents. So 0 to 7, kids live in a magical world. You give them a broomstick, it becomes a unicorn, and it's real. You give them a cardboard box, it becomes a majestic fort. And to them, it's real. To an adult, it's a box and they're playing. No, to the kid, it's real. We remember those days. But when you get to 7, 8 years old, you have a brain puberty. And now you start accessing critical thinking because evolution says you've got 7 years worth of guidance from people that should be smarter than you to give you enough guidance so that you can learn through those 7 years for you to now be able to draw upon starting to make your own decisions. Right? So that's why you tell somebody who's 5 years old that they're not good enough. They don't have critical thinking. They don't say, oh, dad's in a bad mood. They take on that they're not good enough and start projecting that out for the rest of their life.
And so if you hear things like this, any emotional experience you have when you're a kid, you can probably think back and remember because it impacts you so much, doesn't it? And that really must then imprint upon your whole psyche, projecting forwards. Even something which may have just been a passing comment from someone else with no thought or even meaning it. Because I can recall things myself, and I've spoke with my wife as well. We laugh about something someone said years ago, which she still recalls and still quotes. Must have been forgotten about when said, but as can really impact you. So yeah, that's really interesting to hear that. And also very frightening as well, being a parent as well. You need to be really careful, don't you? Not sure, you know, what you're saying could be doing to your kids.
Difference between frightening and liberating.
Yeah.
Because now you're aware.
Yeah.
And our parents weren't.
Yeah, that's it. That's
right?
very good.
So, the best gift that says you can give your child as a parent is self-esteem.
Mm.
You can't give them the career that is right for them. You can't give them the best education that's right for them. We can do our best. Right? But ultimately, they're starring in their movie. And if we try to write their script for them, they will kick back.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And they do as well. You see this a lot. You can't do anything for anyone else, can you? I say to my kids, one of my kids wants to join the Paras. And I was like, do you want to join it though? Not just because you think that I want you to, because that's a recipe for disaster and for being pretty unhappy, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And when we realized that, the only thing that we can do for anyone else, right? Because the number one rule of coaching is if you want something for somebody more than they want it for themselves, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
You know that, as tough as it is, if it's like a brother or a close friend who's self-sabotaging, we want to help them out, or drug addict or whatever. But if you want it more for them than they want it for themselves, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, as a coach or as a person who does strategic intervention, you could potentially engineer some level of, inspiration for them, but or some kind of motivation.
As they do at workplaces, don't they, to motivate unmotivated troops? Do you know what I mean? People in jobs that don't want to be there. What do? You know, to reward them, carrot and stick and stars and rewards, and but it just doesn't work, does it? You know, you might get a little bit more out of them, but no one's really happy in the whole equation in a setup like that, are they?
We have different needs. Some people will go to a lower paid job because they get more recognition. Right? Some people will go to a higher paid job because it's more of a challenge. That turns them on. Some people will change jobs because they're social and they're bored sitting in an office on their own. But everyone has different needs, and you can't cater a blanket for everybody because we're all different.
No, of course.
But ultimately, the only thing that we can do in our movie to help other people is be the example first, and then the invitation, and then let go of what they do with that invitation.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I'll try and remember that myself as well. Be the example.
Be the example, not of a dad who was a great para. Be an example of a dad who followed his passion.
Yeah, that's what I always say.
Which happened to be in the paras.
100%. Yeah. Find your paras, whatever that may be. You find the thing because I was obsessed, and I think being obsessed about something, and I was very much in my mind. So I would have fantasies about stuff and run away in my own mind as a kid and as a teenager and as a young man in my 20s and even in my early 30s. Probably still a bit now, but as you develop and get older, you're less in your mind, aren't you? But I was very much kind of lose normal reality by just delving into in-depth kind of dreams and scenarios of what I was going to get and what it would be like. A visualization, really, but a very powerful one when you're emotionally stimulated and excited about something, and you're drawn towards that. Every action that I would take would try to be drawing me one step closer to that, or I wouldn't do it. So everything, and I think if you've got that kind of mindset and approach, you're going to succeed in anything, really, aren't you? Which obviously, you must have. And you went on to be very successful then with all your self-development. I believe you work with Tony Robbins and stuff. Is that right? Or you've been with some...
2002, I became Tony's youngest serving trainer. So
wow.
I spent decade and a half traveling the world at Tony events, basically doing strategic intervention, running the room, training his apprentice trainers, that kind of stuff. So I got a good grounding with my work with Tony, but I've had many mentors over the life.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And to throw back to what you were saying, Albert Einstein said imagination is the most powerful human quality.
Yeah, of course.
And if you go to the Bible, and I'm not a religious person, I don't do the rules around how we impose on religion, but the Bible is a fascinating text, scientific text, if you know how to read it and how it's engineered. And the best person to guide people on that is the late, great Neville Goddard. But in the Bible, there's a quote, "Lest ye become like children, you shall not inherit the kingdom." The instruction there is, stop getting stuck in your ways, open your mind to where those theta waves, where those alpha waves are.
Yeah, and play.
Then, and your kingdom, not the kingdom, your kingdom will open up. Because where did you say the kingdom of heaven is where? Yeah, here's an address, key it in the sat nav. Is it down on the corner? No, it's within. Right? And that's why, when you look at how to interpret things, I've done a lot of work around studying the secret societies, right? And the secret societies make no secret the fact they exist, right? You've got the Brotherhood, Skull and Bones, you've got the Masons, you've got the Knights Templar, all throughout history. There's no secret to them. You've got the modern day, the Bilderberg group, for example. What's secret is what's taught inside. You'll never get a 33rd degree Mason tell you anything about what goes on at the ceremonies, for example. But they have, for the vast majority of humanity, called a lot of the shots. And that's where we see now wars being engineered, et cetera, all the bullshit that happened from 2020. But if you know what the game is, you're more empowered. And the Bible was written as an allegory. And the best way to describe that is if you see it from one perspective, it gives one message. If you see it from another perspective, it gives a different message. And if you take, do you remember the film Happy Feet, the cartoon?
Yeah.
Right? See, if you took your kid to the cinema to see that, the kid sees a dancing penguin.
Yeah.
And they have a great time. But the adults, there was a whole different message about sustainability, about conformity. Right? The kids don't get that message.
Yeah.
Why? Same film, but a different level of awareness.
And loads of adult jokes as well.
Exactly.
which go straight over the kids' heads and keeps the rest of the family engaged.
Yeah, but that's an allegory. It's designed, same message, two different messages depending on your level of awareness. And the Bible was essentially put together, written by, Council of Nicaea in 400 AD. It was designed to disempower the masses by having them essentially give away their power to an external source that they had to be, like a school teacher. Yeah, they treat God as a parent or as a vending machine, if you want to pray. Whereas the secret societies wrote it in a very different way on how to empower yourself to use the rule set of metaphysics. And again, if you want a masterclass in that, read, Neville Goddard's At Your Command. He died the year I was born, but amazing mystic. But it just goes to show you our sense of power is our responsibility. And if you want to create the life that you want, if you want to be able to create, if you want to be the star of your movie rather than end up as some film extra in a big budget disaster movie when you turn on the news at night, you have to make a decision that that's what you're going to do. And at 17 years old, I got into personal growth at the same time I got into entrepreneurship. And so for the last, say, 35 years, that has really been the guiding principle for how I've lived my life. Now, in my early 20s, I was an asshole to work for. I was an ego-driven, insecure guy,
As we all are in our 20s, aren't we? When you look back, Yeah,
no, nobody's born in line.
Yeah.
Buddha wasn't born in line. He was born Prince Siddhartha and had to go through his own journey, right? But when it comes to getting outgrowing your ego, again, emotional maturity is a choice.
Yeah.
And so if you can make a decision right now that I'm going to turn off the news. Why? Because it's all the same news. It just happens to different people. But the agenda that's driving it is not to empower you, it's to disempower you. And if you think that looking at what's on TV is the news, you're in Disneyland.
Yeah.
Right? Everything's going on in the world. Why would you want to select your narrow little focus on something that somebody else has chosen that makes you feel like crap? All right, first thing to do, if you want to improve mental health, don't go to a doctor and get Prozac. Turn off the damn news and realize that you're the star of your own movie.
Yeah.
Now we're getting somewhere. So I just wanted to share it because sometimes people need reminding the fact that if they think it's them against the world, they feel disempowered.
Yeah.
But you are the star. Nobody's got the right to tell you you can't do it. No one's taking anything away from you. And if you see your problems as challenges to rise to, you're going to suddenly start having a very different outer world. Why? Fundamental principle you can take away today. Outer world follows inner world, not the other way around. And if you've got chaos in your outer world, check your thinking.
That's really powerful, that is. And for that as well, that's really a great statement to say and very, very true. I'm just thinking about yourself as well with your journey, because I know you had great success and then you had some turmoil, quite considerable amount of turmoil, didn't you? We've got about just under 15 minutes left. I'd love to, if it was okay with you, and you're okay to share that with everyone, because I know it's probably quite personal, but I've heard you talk about it. So
I lead with it.
Yeah, that's great. We're at full ownership on the situation. So you built multi-million-pound companies, and then something happened, didn't it? Do you want to talk us?
Yeah, I got a knock on the door 7 a.m. from Mishcon de Raya, which is Princess Diana's divorce lawyers. Yeah, $100 million ruthless firm, acting on behalf of a multi-billion-dollar client that she'll probably remain nameless as Hewlett Packard. And suing me for $17 million. This is back 2016. I'm like, what? And it had to do with a multi-million-dollar business deal we'd done in 7 years before in Dubai. I'm back living in England, and I'm like, I don't get it. It says, oh yeah, well, I bought $12 million worth of goods from them, paid in full, resold it small margin. They didn't like some of the people I resold it to because they were actually distributors. So they wanted to sue me.
Yeah, okay.
They said the difference between wholesale and retail, which is 17 million. I'm like, you're on crack. I said, it doesn't make any sense. I paid you in full. I own full title. I can set fire to the stuff if I want. I'm free to sell it to who I want. Yeah, well, give us $100,000. We'll make it all go away. They just wanted to pressure me, scare me, get a little bit more profit out of the deal than they got already, right? And I said, no, I didn't. I saw it as financial bullying. There wasn't a court in England that would even entertain it. Right? There's no contract that I signed saying I couldn't sell it to anyway. It was stupid. Right? They wanted to really just stop me from doing it again. I wasn't even in that business anymore. Anyway, lawyers litigate. It's what they do. So I wouldn't play ball. So they issued a contempt of court application. They said, oh, you breached a freezing order. And I had a look at it. I hadn't. And I looked at it. And the argument was clever. As lawyers distort context to support their version of content. Of
course, yeah.
That's how it works, right? You read the book. So I said no. So I went to court. Bear in mind, I'm on legal aid. They froze my accounts. They've got $250,000 worth of firepower in the courtroom. a silk, which is higher than a QC, junior barrister, 3 solicitors from Mishcon, their own transcriber. I mean, it was only going to go one
Kangaroo
way.
court.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
At High Court London. And they sold it to the judge. Again, this is a civil action. I'm not a criminal, never been arrested, never been accused of a crime, no jury, no found guilty. There's none of that.
Apart from blowing a bar up when you were 17.
I got a caution, right? So I, and they sold this contempt application to the judge. He gave me 6 months in prison as a civil prisoner, non-criminal. And because Pentonville was the closest to the court, I got sent to Pentonville, unsegregated, because it's not geared for any civil prisoners. 200-year-old Victorian prison with the most violent, dangerous prison in the UK. Guy was just stabbed to death before I got there. Attempted murders weekly, blood on the floor is a daily occurrence. You're talking 1,300 people crammed into an 800-person prison.
Wow.
And trial by fire. You're not really giving an induction. You haven't got to figure out. I've never been to prison. I've been seeing stuff like that on the movies. Right? It's like Prison Break. The same kind of prison, right? And so I have a choice to make in court when they send me away. And I lost everything. I lost my business. I lost my wedding. I went from, say, multi-million-dollar business that they saddled me with the legal costs, even though I was on legal aid. I ended up with, I was $350,000 in debt coming out of prison with no credit rating, right? After 6 months. But it's not what happens that makes the difference. If I saw myself as a prisoner, as a victim, what would happen? I tell you, I'd lose 30% of my muscle strength, going back to that example.
Yeah.
You have to look at this as an opportunity. You have to look at this as a challenge to rise to. And I asked myself the question, I'm like, I've been lucky enough to be teaching this stuff at that point for 25 years.
Yeah.
Helping millions of people around the world shift their mindset. This is clearly what I call a graduation event. If I can't demonstrate this in real time, who the hell am I to teach?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm not going in as a prisoner. I'm going in as a secret agent of change.
Was you like that immediately, though, or did you have a few wobbles where you thought, what the heck has happened?
I knew that the gap between it happening and the decision is the most critical gap.
Yeah.
If you allow that wedge of doubt in, it's going to drive further.
Yeah, of course.
I had to. And I got 25 years of knowing the game and a whole set of psychological tools most people don't have. So, I was fortunate in that respect. But I didn't get scared. I got excited, right? I'm like, the real people I could probably help with the skills that I have probably never get to a seminar or a podcast or see it. Why? Because they're in somewhere like Pentonville. If they were going to seminars on podcasts, they probably would have ended up in jail. And jail is not full of bad people. It's full of a lot of good people that have made bad choices.
Yeah, there's a difference, isn't there? Yeah.
And so, when I went in with a mission. And long story short, there was obviously an adjustment period, but you say you read the book.
Yeah.
Which isn't a book. It's the 11 letters I wrote in real time during that experience as it's unfolding at the time. And this isn't something I wrote afterwards where your memory's embellishing stuff. Yeah. Right? This is real time happening. But I basically went in, I ended up getting a lot of the prisoners off drugs. I was stopping suicides. I was nothing more than I'd ever done in a Tony Robbins environment. And there was a lot more crazies in Tony seminars than prison. Right? Yeah, and I say that tongue in cheek, but not far off. You know? I redesigned the intake system to help reduce violence between the wings. That's now being used in prisons all over the world, changing thousands of lives a month. I won a national award for the work that I did in there, and it ended up being probably one of the most awe-inspiring adventures I've ever had the privilege of living.
Wow, what a way to look at it. Do you think when you went in there as well, you talked earlier about the beta waves and you are more productive when you're in a different state. Do you think that emanates and influences people around you? And that's perhaps what happened.
Yeah. I could, we actually did the research. When I came out, we looked at the violence statistics in Pentonville, specifically around D-Wing where I was on, right? And from the day that I moved in to the day that I left, there was a 13% reduction in violence on that wing. The day that I left, and I didn't know this, so I was shipped out after 4.5 months it took them to process me to an open cap prison. And when I finally came out, I met up with one of the other prisoners I was in there that I was helping with. And he says, "Pete, did you hear what happened?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "The day you left." He says, "No." He says, "You were shipped out at 7 a.m. He says, "By 9 o'clock, the entire wing kicked off." He said, "It was just nasty." He said, and it lasted for the 2-3 weeks while he was still there. Like that. Now, I'm not saying that was me. I don't need, looking for an ego stroke here, but I am saying that there is something. We've seen so many now scientific, validated, placebo-controlled experiments whereby you take groups of meditators in New York and crime drops by 15% during the meditation, right, over 2 days. Right? We've seen pictures of monks praying over people and watching their cancer tumors reduce in real time. Now, when you understand the virtual reality model, it makes sense scientifically. You're not breaking the rule set, you're working with the rule set. But you can definitely impact. That's why when you've got somebody who's angsty walks into a room, the energy changes. You walk into the kitchen and your spouse ain't happy with you, she don't have to open her mouth. Right? Yeah. Something's wrong. We're bioelectrical beings. We pick up stuff. Just like a radio picks up signals, we pick up signals. We're electrical beings. That's how it works. So yeah, absolutely. And of course, I didn't have any distractions. There's no email, no electronics, no phones, no computers, no internet, no nothing. So for 4.5 months, I had a complete detox where for hours a day, I'm able to meditate and really connect to unconditional love and send that energy out, visualizing in my mind, sending like a beam of light to the hearts of all the people in the cells that are suffering.
Amazing. So with that then, that experience, when you came out and the way you processed it while it was happening and reflecting backwards as well, was a positive one, which helped you grow. Did you, we're on the last few minutes of the podcast now, and I could speak to you for another hour. I really could. I'd love to go into detail about what happened, but it's obviously in your book, which you can, what's your book called on that one again?
The Inside Track.
That's it, Inside Track. Yeah. And that's about your experience. Yeah.
You can get it $25 on Amazon, but I'm giving it away for people if they just help me cover the shipping. It cost me $12 to print it, stock it, ship it, pick it, post it. If you give me $10 towards that, I'll give all of your listeners a copy if they think it'll help.
That's amazing. Where can they get hold of that? Your website, is it?
GetPetesBook.com. That's where I put 500 copies aside for listeners here if you want to go on that. Just cover $10 towards the shipping. I'm still paying on top of that, but it saves going to Amazon and paying $25.
Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you for that as well. And just to finish off then, so you come out of jail and were you able to reestablish, you're here now, you've got your books, you're successful. How long did it take to get back on your feet after all of that, just to kind of finish things off?
My first priority was to make good on the promises I'd made before I went in. We had to cancel seminars. We had people that bought tickets that, they got the rug pulled.
Yes.
It took me 1.5 years. I had people that bought years worth of coaching or trips around the world with me.
So you paid all those back as well, did you?
Out of 150 people, we gave 2 refunds, and it took me 18 months. But they gave me the time to make good on every promise I made.
Wow.
And that was my first priority. Then I had to pay Hewlett-Packard legal fees. And anyway, fast forward 7 years. We just won the ClickFunnels Award last year for $25 million worth of new business. I'm living in my dream home. Everybody's whole. No one can tell you that setbacks aren't there to help you move forward. And a lot of people actually read the book and realized I was real. That was a huge, huge thing. So, okay, I'll take what this guy says serious. They bought the courses. I helped put stuff together to help more people. And we've now changed nearly 60,000 lives since coming out of jail.
That's absolutely amazing. Yep. And I think it's probably a really good way to kind of conclude and finish the podcast, Peter. Absolutely brilliant speaking to you today, mate. Thank you so much for putting aside this time, especially on your birthday. And again, happy birthday for you.
I appreciate that.
And great to see you. And I look forward to meeting you face to face at some stage as well.
I'm sure that'll happen. And the greatest gift I could have for my birthday is the ability to be able to help more people. And you've given me that gift. So I appreciate you for it as well. Thank you, Lee, for doing what you do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Cheers.